We learned at GA 2021 to be given by our UUCC members, Andrew Fagan and Robert Wilkinson. Andy and Robert volunteered to be our congregational delegates at GA this year.
Circle round for justice, healing, courage. That was the theme for General Assembly 2021.
Justice. We who believe in justice and peace, who believe in widening circle, who believe that we can work together, hear each other, see the pain, know the love. We who believe that the arc of the universe is long, but that it bends towards justice, must know that it bends only if we make it bend, if we believe. Reverend David Kramer, minister, United Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Waukesha.
Healing. With the support and encouragement of the congregation and the rest of the ministry team, we've been able to re-envision what pastoral care looks like in a community that's been traumatized and torn apart by violence and injustice, and what pastoral care and the role that pastoral care can play in a community in helping it to heal. Reverend Suzelle Lynch of Unitarian Universalist Church West in Brookfield, Wisconsin.
Courage. Let us go forth from this place, ready to reopen our mind, reawaken our spirit, recover our courage, recapture our heart. Let us revive what is dying, rekindle what flickers, reboot what is crashing, retool what is stopped, rebel at injustice, resist all repression, remove all barriers, refuse to give up, repair what is broken, revive what is sleeping, repair what has fallen, reform what's unjust. Because one day, I don't know if it will come in my lifetime, but one day the chains will be broken and those asleep will wake up and those estranged can make up and all the fearful will stand up and all who have given up will get up and those who have strayed will shape up and those who were missed will show up and none of us will give up, back up, or shut up until the world we dream of is built up. One day affirmed, unafraid, alive, and in love again and again. Reverend Tony Larson, Unitarian Church North, Mequon, Wisconsin.
This year's General Assembly paid much attention to the lives of Indigenous peoples. GA was virtual, online once again, but if it had been in person, the location would have been Milwaukee, Wisconsin. During the Wednesday morning worship entitled Draw the Circle Wide, recognition was given to the American Indian nations of Wisconsin, depicted on this slide. The Thursday morning worship service was presented by the Native Caucus of the Diverse and Revolutionary UU Multicultural Ministries, or DRUM. DRUM is a UU collective bringing lay-led religious professionals together to overcome racism through resistance and transform Unitarian Universalism through our multicultural experiences. Through storytelling, music, dance, and ceremony, they provided a moving service, delivering several important messages I'll speak about now. Today's chalice lighting words honored, quote, the sacred fire in our hearts and minds that brings us into the circle, all equal, all accepted, all validated. A beautiful way of expressing our first principle of affirming the inherent worth and dignity of every person. In drawing the circle wide, energy was directed towards the gathering of human strands broken off from the web of life. That refers to the thousands of communities that were shattered by the white man's occupation of Indian territory, but are being resurrected and woven together once again. Dr. Clyde Grubbs told a Cherokee story that's been spoken for thousands of years, entitled The Rabbit and the Turtle. It's a little different, it's a different version of the tortoise and the hare story that we all learned as children. In this version, the rabbit challenges the turtle to a race, thinking this is going to be an easy one, in 3 days. So the turtle accepts, and in that period of time before the race begins, we find out, and spoiler alert, we find out that the turtle has gathered its community of brothers and sisters and cousins and parents and children, all of whom look very similar, and plots to place, have those turtles place themselves along the pathway. Come the day of the race, they start, and the rabbit runs way ahead of the turtle, thinking this is going to be so easy. He takes a break, and while he's taking a break, he looks over farther down the road to see the turtle walking, and he goes, how did he get ahead of me? So he runs again and takes another break, and you get the idea. Further down the road, he sees the turtle and wonders again, I must be going crazy. How did he get there? Finally, the race ends, the turtle wins, and the rabbit is totally bewildered. The lessons of the story are, we are strongest when we act in harmony as a community. The turtle reveals to the rabbit that it wasn't just one turtle, but many turtles. And the second lesson being, if you slow down just enough, you could notice that all turtles don't exactly look alike. They're each unique. We heard from 2 representatives of the Standing Rock Indian Reservation, located near what is now Cannonball, North Dakota, about the resistance to the Dakota Access Pipeline that will disrupt sacred native land and waters. We were told of the struggles of Native Hawaiians, including their campaign to restore the sacred mountain known as Mauna Kea, where a telescope array was erected. They fight to restore Mauna Kea to its natural pre-settler state. Attending this service, I was moved by the powerful expression of Native Americans' connection to the physical world and the web of life.
For myself, as a first-time participant, I found it took some time to get used to the language and protocols employed at GA. For example, in making any statement, the speaker would introduce her or himself, for example, by saying the following: my name is Robert Wilkinson. I'm a cis male. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm a member of the Unitarian Universalist community of Cambria, which is located on land originally occupied by the Chumash indigenous people of the Central Coast of California. I'm a bald white male wearing a white shirt and charcoal pants.
Robert, you left out, I'm a very handsome bald white male. Just like in our congregation, it's rare that more than one person runs for a particular position in the UUA's Board of Trustees. Sorry, technical difficulties. Still, the left hand not quite doing its job. More than one person, it's rare that more than one person runs for a position on the UUA's Board of Trustees, but this year, the Board of Trustees position 8 had 2 candidates, one nominated by the nominating committee and one running by petition. Reverend Kate Laurie of the Quimper UU Fellowship of Port Townsend, Washington, summarized it this way, quote, "The UUA Nominations Committee has put forth UU Minister Sam Trumbore as a candidate. Reverend Trumbore is a longtime advocate for racial justice and is very supportive of the UUA's approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion within Unitarian Universalism. Running by petition against Reverend Trumbore is Jay Kiskell, who is opposed to the UUA's approach, including opposition to the idea that we live amidst a white supremacy culture. It is also his belief that the UUA is becoming less democratic overall." End quote. The UUA sponsored several online debates between the candidates in order to help delegates make their decision. The debates were very respectful, and the candidates agreed on a number of issues. But the primary differences between the 2 candidates' positions were, number one, disagreement over the health of the democratic process and General Assembly. Reverend Trumbore supports the work of the nominating committee as it operates currently. Jay Kiskell states, quote, "The nominating committee has become nothing more than a gatekeeper to preserve the ideological mindset of the board," end quote. He did not feel he received fair treatment as a candidate by petition. Secondly, Sam Trumbore supports the Commission on Institutional Change report entitled "Widening the Circle of Concern," which he describes as, quote, "our current roadmap to address racial inequities within our UU association and congregations." Jay Kiskell questions what he considers, quote, "ideological conformity" over the concept of white supremacy culture and how we UUs need to address it within our congregations. Reverend Sam Trumbore prevailed in the election, but there's a lot to unpack regarding the 2 candidates' positions. You can explore more on their websites, which are shown here and will be in the recording of this service if you want to check them out later. Robert?
Thank you, Andy. As UUs at GA, we set priorities for social justice efforts. The proposed priorities exemplify UU commitment to justice, equity, and compassion. Generally, the documents that set UUA social justice priorities take 2 forms. They are, first, statements of conscience, and second, actions of immediate witness. The statements of conscience are a product of 3 years of study by the Commission on Social Witness, the UUA Board of Trustees, and the General Assembly Planning Committee. The congregations propose once a year 1 issue for study and development as a statement of conscience. During the study period, input is sought from congregations in the General Assembly. After the 2nd year of study, the Commission drafts a proposed statement of conscience that is presented for approval by the delegates at GA. 2/3 of the delegates must vote to approve the statement of conscience for it to pass and become a social justice priority. The second form of document setting forth social justice priorities is an action of immediate witness. An action of immediate witness is a document affirming social justice policy through speech and action that demonstrates solidarity with those who are mistreated. In contrast to the statement of conscience, which requires 2 or 3 years of study, actions of immediate witness require immediate action, and are considered right away. At the 2021 General Assembly, one statement of conscience and 3 actions of immediate witness were approved by the delegates. In an unusual process, 4 actions of immediate witness were presented to delegates ahead of the business meeting. Delegates voted to choose which 3 would be discussed. The statement of conscience that was approved is entitled Undoing Systematic White Supremacy, a Call to Prophetic Action. It calls upon the UUA, UU individuals and congregations to actively engage in undoing systematic white supremacy, such as embedded institutional and pervasive racism, white privilege, and racial bias and oppression. Proposed concrete actions in purport of the statement include, first, engaging in our communities and the nation with a movement to heal the evil of racism by participating and organizing social action to denounce injustices such as police brutality, theft of native lands, and environmental racism. Second, working internally in the UUA to overcome systematic racism woven into UUA culture. Third, building relationships across boundaries of privilege and oppression. And fourth, fulfilling our UU role as spiritual anchor to Black, Indigenous, and people of color UUs, known as BIPOC UUs. Fulfilling this role requires financial and administrative support of spiritual healing within the UUA infrastructure. Andy?
Thank you, Robert. So that was the statement of conscience. The first action of immediate witness, AIW, approved by the GA delegates, cites many laws and restrictions that have been proposed in states across the USA, which would target trans youth and trans people with the least power, enabling discrimination in sports, healthcare, education, birth certificates, and beyond. At least 18 bills have been passed in 9 states. It calls upon Unitarian Universalists to strongly condemn all anti-trans legislation and demand the repeal of recently passed laws in several states. Further, this AIW calls upon the UUA and all UU congregations to fight all discrimination based on, quote, gender identity, expression, sex characteristics, and affectional sexual orientation. Second AIW. As Nancy stated in today's first reading, GA recognized with sincere compassion the pain and suffering brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. The second action of immediate witness called on the UUA and all its congregations to lobby, quote, the US government to work with the World Health Organization and other agencies to make vaccinations and essential medical services available to all nations, to recognize and work to correct the socioeconomic disparity that results in inadequate health care for so many. And, quote, we ask the Unitarian Universalist Association, our congregations, social justice organizations, and interfaith partners to work together to research and demand federal solutions, end quote. Finally, this AIW expresses gratitude for the healthcare workers, teachers, and social workers, food and transportation workers, and many others who have cared for people during recent emergencies. Robert?
The third action of immediate witness approved of by the delegates is entitled Stop Voter Suppression and Partner for Voting Rights and a Multiracial Democracy. It calls upon the UUA and its congregations to first engage nationally with UU actors such as UU The Vote and UUs for Social Justice to deepen the theological grounding of issues of democracy. Second, to call right, witness, and advocate for national legislation, including For the People Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, and the Washington, D.C. Admissions Act. And three, collaborate with local partners to combat voter suppression and other anti-democratic efforts put into place by state legislatures. This AIW is prefaced by a written series of examples of anti-democratic efforts, events, or circumstances, such as the gutting of the Voting Rights Act in 2013 by the U.S. Supreme Court, the gerrymandering of congressional and legislative districts by state legislatures, the failure to recognize the District of Columbia, which prevents its citizens from being represented in the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate, and the January 6, 2021 insurrection that attempted to overturn the 2020 presidential election.
Thanks, Robert. So Robert mentioned early on that there were 4 actions of immediate witness offered up, but only 3 can be considered based on the bylaws of the General Assembly. So prior to the business meeting where we discussed the AIWs, a vote took place online, and the fourth of the 4, this one got the least votes. So it was not officially considered, but it was still discussed because it was felt to be important to bring it up to the GA's assembly regarding the U.S. military aid to Israel and the Middle East conflict. It stated, quote, "In accord with the call from the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, we, the 60th General Assembly of the UUA, call for U.S. military aid to Israel to be withheld until Israel complies with international law and stops violating the rights of Palestinians," end quote. As always, issues involving the Middle East are difficult and controversial. Look to future General Assemblies for this issue to be addressed once again. Robert.
Thank you, Andy. GA also offers many pre-recorded seminars on a wide variety of topics. One, the post-pandemic small congregation, seemed particularly relevant to our congregation. It explored what small congregations learned from dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic and what practices they should consider carrying on into the future. The panelists were 4 UU Congregational Life Consultants, the Reverends Erica Barron, Megan Foley, Philip Lunn, and Sarah Schur. The panelists focused on 3 useful qualities found in small congregations. These are a sense of mission or purpose, 2, the ability to change, or what they call nimbleness, and 3, the ability to be inclusive. Briefly, as to their mission and nimbleness, small congregations are generally quick to identify their parishioners or their community's needs and organize to meet them. For example, one congregation was quick to set up a warming center for homeless people at the outset of the pandemic. Moreover, during the pandemic, small congregations have used communication technology such as we're doing today, Zoom or FaceTime, to be more inclusive in getting members to take part in various activities, such as serving on the Board of Trustees or participating in strategic planning meetings. These new technologies allow members who could not participate in the past, for example, due to a long commute or family responsibilities, to take part. Equally exciting is the use of the technologies to allow 2 or more congregations to put on events together. This fosters more creativity in organizing activities or meeting parishioners' needs and development of friendships between congregations. The panelists said that they would like to see the use of communications technologies extended into the future. Benefits include congregations being less isolated and becoming more diverse in their membership. The use of these technologies may also free congregations from the financial obligation of maintaining a building, such as we've gone through here. In other words, a congregation could exist and operate with a building or without a building by meeting virtually and renting meeting space only when necessary. In conclusion, the annual Ware Lecture also must be mentioned. Stacey Abrams and Desmond Meade were the guest speakers, interviewed by UUA President Susan Frederick Gray. Their remarks were profound and covered a number of crucial social justice issues, too many to summarize this morning. We would offer a screening of the recording of the 2021 Ware Lecture at a separate time if members are interested. Andy?
So you can tell that GA was a laugh riot with all these policy issues to be confronted. There is fun to be had. There is definitely community, even albeit virtual. Though that's experienced during the morning worships primarily, but even during general assemblies when the business of the UUA is encountered, there's a good deal of camaraderie and community at the same time that we're confronting big issues. Finally, as delegates, Robert and I each voted our personal conscience. We wonder if for future GAs, our congregation would like to consider the numerous issues to be addressed ahead of time, they are available ahead of time, and provide direction on how our delegates should vote. That process would require a significant amount of time and energy, but would certainly prove worthwhile. Thank you.